Welcome back, everyone. We are in Revit. We're working on our house project, and we are going to be covering a couple topics in this session of videos. We're going to be focusing really on project or file setup to deal with electrical power. So there's two ways to go about these activities. One is to refer to some PDF documents that I've placed on Blackboard. I've put an image over to the right here that you can see. And one is called Electrical Power System Setup, the second called Panel Schedule in an architectural file. So, of course, because we're all online, I'd like to cover these topics in video to hopefully add some clarity here. So, I am going to be going through the Word documents, not much different, but there could be some added value and some clarity by covering these things in video. So that said, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to highlight is that I am, of course, have my project complete and all of the files and all of the properties set up. So I could review those, but wouldn't be able to take you through setting anything up. So the approach that I'm going to take is to start with a fresh file, and so that I can take you directly through all of the activities that need to be taken care of, and making the same selections that new users would be making as well. So let's do that. So I am going to, instead of opening my house project, going to start a new file. And I'm going to choose an architectural template because, of course, that's what we chose when we originally did the house. And so from here, once this loads up, I am going to go to the Manage tab. And this Manage tab is where we have been doing all of our files set up in HVAC, in plumbing, as well as now electrical. So in the Manage tab, there is this set of structural settings and MEP settings, and these MEP settings include mechanical, which is HVAC, electrical, and I guess plumbing. We didn't have to do physical setup in plumbing. Okay, so electrical. All right. So the first thing that we're going to take care of is telling Revit that we're going to bring power into the house, and that's going to be done under this option down here called voltage definitions. And notice these voltage definitions, it's as if we're defining now what kind of power is okay to bring into the house, and of course there is none right now, so we're going to need to add it. And I'm going to add these names. And these names are just that, they're text. And then I'm going to put in a value, right? That's the nominal voltage. And then, so we have talked in the past that these systems inside of Revit have the ability to do engineering analysis, and if we're modeling correctly, then the licensed engineer that we're working with can use Revit to do their design and also then run tests to verify their design. So we would like to set up our model as accurately as possible. So while in theory we want to bring in 120 volts, in reality, in our houses, it's not uncommon for the electrical grid, meaning kind of this whole system in the town that you live in, may be overtaxed and the voltage starts to drop. And so we're going to put in a minimum value, and there can be times when the grid is over-managed, meaning they put too much power into the grid, and the voltage goes over 120 volts. So we're going to put in 130 at the maximum. Clearly those values, your values that you would get from your engineer, but when they're talking about minimum and maximum, this is the area they're discussing. So we're going to need to add an additional row, so I'll come down here and click Add. And down here, I'm going to put 208 three-phase, and I'm going to have 208 as my nominal, and I'm going to have 198 as my minimum and 218 as my maximum. So nothing magic here. You're getting this sense that, hey, I'm saying 10 volts under or 10 volts over. Those would be adjusted depending on, kind of what town somebody is in and what the power system is and what the engineer wants their building to be able to deal with. Okay, so quite frankly, that takes us through steps 1, A, B, and C. And so now, if I were to click OK, our house would have power. So that means it comes in, but we now need to define inside of Revit what kind of power we're going to push to the rest of the house. And that's under distribution systems, right? So I'm going to come down here, click distribution systems, and notice there are none. So we're going to add some. So we want to add 120 volt distribution. And how many phases is it? Notice now, right, I only have these options to choose from. This isn't just text. This is now an electrical calculation. And in configuration, I'm going to leave that at none. And how many wires are we going to put in this? We're going to put in 3. We're going to put in a high voltage wire at 120. We're going to put in what's called a neutral for the return. And the third wire is this ground wire that's going to connect the entire electrical system down into the ground. So we have a line-to-line voltage, which is none. And here, line to ground is this 120 single phase. So we're going to need an additional line. So I'm going to come down and click Add. And our next one is going to be titled 208 volts. Here, this is called 3-phase. And all this means is that there are, instead of having a 120 volt line and a neutral line, we have 2 120 volt lines and a neutral line. So it's considered 3-phase. And the configuration that we're going to put in is called delta, right? Again, this is an engineering term, and you would get this from your engineer. So if we have 3 wires associated carrying the power, we need a total of 4 because we still have that ground wire to deal with. Okay, so now our line-to-line voltage is this 208 3-phase. But if we hook one of the 120 volt lines to neutral, that would still only be 120 volts. So line to ground or line to line. All right, so basically our entire house is going to be wired up for 120 volts, and potentially things like our air conditioner maybe at 208 volts, or if we have an electric oven, it might be at 208 volts. Our electric dryer might be at 208 volts. Things that use a really significant amount of electricity are going to be run on a higher voltage. Okay, so that takes care of now steps 1 through E, right? So we have brought power into the house, and we've told Revit what kind of electricity we're going to run from what comes in to through the house. So now let's make an annotation setting. When we come down to the drafting, we want our wiring for the drawing sheets to show how many wires are in each cable. And we do that up here in the wiring setting. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in some tick marks on each of the cables. And here we want to put in a short tick mark for the hot a long tick mark for the ground, and a neutral tick mark we want to be short as well. So notice when I come in and try and hit this down arrow, right, saying I should select the type of family for that tick mark, I'm getting a blank box. So as the same as all of you, we're going to need to load those tick mark families into our file. So I'm going to exit this dialog box. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go insert those tick marks. So let's do that. So I know I've said this in the past, but I always use this, hit escape a couple times so I know I'm out of a command, and then insert, load family. I never kind of in the middle of a command try and load a family. So of course I'm going to navigate to my flash drive. You're going to want to navigate to wherever you have stored the tick mark families that I placed on Blackboard. Alright, so I'm going to load short wire tick mark, long wire tick mark, and here I'm also going to load this circuit panel because we're going to need this in the next couple steps anyway. So let's see. I think I will load a duplex receptacle and a load a switch so that I can create some kind of, how about a recessed can light as well, so that I can test what I'm doing here in this file after we get our setup complete. So I'll click open, and once all these families load in, of course, right, no feedback, but if I were to go find them, I could go find them in the expanded category of families in my project browser. So at this point, I think this is a relatively good place to end this session. We're going to come back, create those tick marks, and then we're going to move on to our power panel. All right, so I hope this is helpful, and we'll see you in the next session.